Hi everyone, welcome back to another mobile clutch repair video. And if you have not already, hit that subscribe button for me. Today we are doing a clutch replacement on a 2011 Ford Focus 1.6 petrol. Let's dive in. So the first thing we are going to do, as always, get those wheels off the vehicle. Next we tackle the under tray. And here you can see we are on top pulling off the airbox so we can have better access to the gear selector cover. Once that is removed, we tackle the under tray. This took a few goes. We could probably do with better organization inside our van here, but it is what it is. Once we finally get the right size spline socket, we get this under tray off and we can access the underneath, no problem. So now the under tray is off, we have perfect access to the gearbox and lower gearbox mount. One of the first things you can see is the leaking drive shaft seal that we will replace later on in this video. And here is the gear selector cover that we removed the airbox to get better access to earlier. So now we pull this plastic gear selector cover off. With the numerous clips around it, we can remove the gear selectors. These can be tricky sometimes, especially for the inexperienced. If you notice in our last Ford Focus video, when we had to replace the gearbox because of low gear oil, the person who replaced the clutch last broke this selector part and used a cable tie to hold it together. Not good. So now that's out of the way. We move on to draining the gearbox oil. There are two versions on these. One is a 22mm socket located on the outside of the gearbox. The other is located inside the gear selector housing and can be quite messy when draining the oil from that version. Then we move on to the wishbones. On these, it's better to remove the 18mm bolt from the wishbone housing rather than knocking out the ball joint. It's faster too. Once those wishbones have been moved out of the way, there is enough room to squeeze them out from the hub. Simply undo the 32mm drive shaft nut and knock the shafts out. Now it's time for the bell housing bolts. We always start at the back of the engine, at the highest point, then move along the circumference. All these bolts are 13mm. A bit of advice for the bolt at the very top. Make sure you get a good socket on there, as these can be quite tight, and if you round the nut off, the job turns into a nightmare. Just a heads up. So something we did off camera, as you can see on the left. The subframe is quite rusty. Before we finished the job, we sprayed buzz weld sealant on there to help protect this, as this is a common issue and we have replaced a few subframes in the past due to corrosion. So now we have jacked the engine ready to be lowered. We are now back on top of the vehicle, ready to remove the three 15mm gearbox mounting bolts and the 113mm earth bolt. Once those are off, all is clear to remove the gearbox. And we can take a quick look inside here. Nothing too bad looks out of place, so it's just going to be a straightforward clutch and slave cylinder replacement. So one of the first things we tackle is the leaking drive shaft seals. We knock these old seals out that have perished and fit brand new seals. Making sure to be careful that the new seals are seated properly, as if you go too hard, they will not sit in place correctly. Once all the seals have been replaced, we move on to our concentric slave cylinder. This is mounted with three 8mm bolts. A little bit of care is used when removing these, as these can round off quite easily. And we finish up with red rubber grease to ensure the bolts do not seize over time. Then the main part of this job, the clutch itself. We remove the old clutch and fit the new one using the alignment tool. Here you can see how worn the old clutch was. Now everything is aligned up, we place the new clutch back into the vehicle and tighten up the 10mm bolts. And that is the job completed. If you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe if you are not already. Thanks for watching. 2009 Ford Focus clutch replacement.